Ouchie. Did you kill me? No, I'm alive. Only the dead know freedom from this suffering.
My game crashed!
Oh my god.
My game crashed.
Please don't abandon me in my time of need. Oh no. Oh no, the spinner's getting me.
Okay, you wanna know what happened?
What happened?
I meleeed, and the game crashed.
Oh, I take it back. This game is a joy. Hey, you know what's a great idea that everyone will totally love? Taking a relevant old horror game franchise centered around a single-player experience and turning it into a wave-based 4-player co-op shooter. That's amazing, right? Absolutely what people would want from a game called Alone in the Dark, right? Right? Of all the ways to try to cash in on a semi-recognizable brand, this has to be one of the most tone-deaf. Alone in the Dark Illumination was released on PC in 2015, published by Atari and developed by a team called Pure FPS, a studio who had made absolutely nothing beforehand and went on to make absolutely nothing afterward. With a pedigree like that, we're in for some quality electronic entertainment here. Let's at least start off trying to find some positive aspects to this game, I guess. Illumination isn't entirely unplayable, as I was able to at least start a game and play with a friend for a little while. That sounds like it should be the bare minimum for a video game, of course, because it should be, but based on reviews and my own personal experience as I began to play it, that's actually pretty noteworthy. The game looks acceptable and is running on Unreal 4, and yeah, I guess that's it for the good though. It kinda runs okay to begin with, and it's visually passable. Let's get on with the rest, I guess. Alone in the Dark Illumination was clearly an instance of Atari trying to milk whatever brands they still had, with this thing being released alongside the reboot of Haunted House, Critic, which was itself maligned on release and even pulled from sale. And just keep that in mind as we go forward. This is acceptable for sale almost 3 years later. Haunted House, Cryptic Graves? No. That's damaging to the Atari reputation. It makes me curious to see just what the hell was wrong with that game, but I digress. We're not talking about it today. Back to Illumination itself, this really seems like they just contracted some unknown studio to make a slapdash co-op game and threw the Alone in the Dark brand on there just to get some extra attention for the project, which would otherwise get absolutely none at all. Alone in the Dark wasn't just a dead horse in 2015, it was the cremated remains of one. Illumination controls simply enough, with WASD being used to move around in a traditional third-person shooter manner. Right mouse is for aiming, left is for shooting, F to interact with objects in the world, and the number keys to swap between equipment. It's perfectly serviceable, but the real issues come from the actual combat itself. The enemy variety is trash, especially for a game like this. There are only a handful of different enemy models, and they all act almost exactly the same. They run at you and claw at your butt. One of them occasionally spits acid at you though, so that's cool, right? In a game like Left 4 Dead, which Illumination very clearly draws influence from, the zombies look different but act exactly the same, this is true. However, Left 4 Dead prioritizes sheer number of enemies on screen at once and also throws the special infected into the mix to spice things up. From what I've played of Illumination, you never have more than 10 enemies on screen at once, if you have even that. They all attack in similar ways, and to top it all off, they spawn infinitely. To make matters even worse, the game's core mechanic makes it so that they're even more of a nuisance to deal with, as enemies in Illumination can only be killed when they are in the light. If an enemy has blue cracks on their model, they're invincible. If they're in the light and glowing yellow, they can be killed. This isn't a consistent rule, because while dumpster fires and artificial lamps can do the trick, the flashlight that the player has on them at all times and is aimed alongside their gun doesn't actually work against the enemies. Why? Who knows, but the game's combat is designed around kiting enemies into a single choke point and then mowing down the conga line you've assembled one by one. It's a predictable cycle and gets extremely old extremely quickly. The levels are all structured around a collection objective. Get X amount of Y, that kind of thing. Since completion of these objectives is all you really need to do, and the player's sprint option has them run faster than any of the generally invincible enemies can, the question becomes why even fight anything at all? The combat is a pain in the ass, and since killing enemies has no bearing on the mission objectives that I played, just hauling ass and completing the tasks at hand is clearly the optimal playstyle. The deep metagame of Alone in the Dark Illumination. I'm confident that this is something that the developers knew because they added one of the worst possible features to solve it with a limited sprint function. When your stamina bar is depleted, rather than just having the player start jogging like they do in a good normal video game, your player character starts slowly ambling around. Just think about this for a second. Who the hell would run away from monsters from the Descent and think to themselves, oh boy, I'm getting real winded here, better take just 5 minutes to walk it off? The only reason this game has any actual challenge is because of this limited sprint function, and I guarantee it was only added to pad the game time. This isn't the worst sprint mechanic I've seen in a recent game. That dubious award still was held by the first Evil Within, but imagine it like this. Going back to the Left 4 Dead comparison, imagine if you had the same game we all know, but the default movement speed in that game was actually the sprint feature, it was limited, and whenever you ran out of stamina, you'd be reduced to a walk. It's irritating and adds nothing of value to what's supposed to be a co-op action game. There are 4 classes in Illumination: the Hunter, the Witch, the Engineer, and the Priest. I only played as the Hunter during my playthrough, but from how my friend described playing as both the Hunter and the Witch, there really aren't many major differences. They all have 1 gun with infinite ammo and 3 special slots unique to each. 2 of these have to be unlocked through the leveling system, which we'll get to. Considering how much shooting you have to do, the gunslinging Hunter class seems like bar none the best choice in my opinion. Hell, 2 of the upgrades for the Hunter, the flamethrower weapon and the light rounds for the AR-15, completely negate the core mechanic of this game because they don't require you to actually kite enemies into the light, you can just shoot on sight. Also, a little bit of series lore on the classes. The Hunter and the Witch are named Ted Carnby and Celeste Hartwood, meaning they're the grandkids or great-grandkids of Edward and Emily from the first game. Try piecing together the Alone in the Dark timeline now, lore fiends. The upgrade tree present here is unnecessary and makes the classes seem gimped from the beginning. You can upgrade your health, stamina, and gun damage, though you can only upgrade one of the 2 choices on the tree's notches. As a co-op game based around standalone campaigns instead of an open world or something like that, you have to wonder why they wouldn't just have each character start out with the same equipment at the same level, and then have them gather upgrades over the course of the campaign. As many as Steam Review will inform you, this game is buggy. There are many small ones, but I encountered one major issue while playing for this review. My friend and I made it to the 2nd level in the mine and were given the objective of finding 3 batteries to put into an elevator generator. He tried placing a battery into the generator after I had picked up one myself, and it was deleted from existence. Just vanished from his inventory, but did not go in the generator. We tried again and had it where he would put the batteries in the generator one at a time, and I would have none on my inventory, but it disappeared again. So he took a break from this train wreck while I put in some lab time in the single player to see if it would work then. I placed all 3 batteries into the slots and got the elevator working. So I backed out and we tried again, having it where only I, the game host, put batteries into the generator. Again, they vanished, and then I realized the problem. The prompt for placing the batteries activates on both the generator and the individual slots in the generator. And if you place the battery in the generator rather than a slot, the game won't register that and it would just eat them. At this point, we both gave up and both demanded a refund. I know this is unprofessional, but frankly, so is this entire game. From what I understand, the game doesn't even change in any significant way as it goes on, so it's just gonna be more of the same. So yeah, I guess Alone in the Dark Illumination gets 2 notable traits from me. The first Steam game I've ever demanded a refund for, and the only game I've never beaten for a review. The second mission borders on unbeatable due to a game-breaking bug involving batteries in an elevator. Even without this, an abhorrent excuse for a wave-based shooter, co-op game, and entry in this dead horse of a franchise. The fact that you can even purchase this trite on Steam is a failure of this platform's quality control. And this is, at the time of writing, how the franchise ends. From trailblazing the horror video game genre to going out with the whimper of a cash-in multiplayer shooter. A part of me does hope that this is how Alone in the Dark finally just dies, for the sake of any sense of respect people might still have for the legacy, though I doubt it at this point. Alone in the Dark has a habit of going away for 7 years or so, with the third game released in 1994, New Nightmare in 2001, the reboot in 2008, and then this crap in 2015. Atari might shove out the corpse of this Frankenstein's monster of a series in 2022 if past track record is any indication, but then again, based on the possibly abysmal sales of Illumination, who can even say for certain at this point?